We are live.
We are live. Here we go.
The premier audio and video experience in the United States this August 4th through the 6th. In Raleigh, North Carolina, Audio Advice Live is going bigger, bolder, and louder. Audio Advice Live is the best place to learn about the latest trends in high-performance audio, home theater, 2-channel, turntables, or headphones. Meet with the industry's top experts, brands, and influencers to hear all the latest and greatest gear live and in person. Register to attend now at audioadvice.live.
All right, welcome everyone. Great to be back with everyone. Happy April. Hope everybody's doing well. And we are joined by some great friends today from Klipsch, who should be some familiar faces joining us again. And obviously, we just showed the quick little teaser for Audio Advice Live, so it's going to be back bigger, better, louder than ever in August. So we hope you guys will be joining us, and we'll be sharing more about that as we get closer to August. Our good friends from Klipsch will absolutely be there. Last year, they brought the Jubilees, right, which was really, really cool. So they're going to be bringing a lot more this year. So let us know in the comments what you want to see from Klipsch at Audio Advice Live. Also, we've got some great giveaways that we're going to be announcing here today. Keep the questions coming. If you got a question for the guys from Klipsch, put them in the comments. We can see those coming across Facebook, YouTube, and we'll get through as many of those as we can. And for our best question giveaway, we're going to be giving away a pair of the new Klipsch 7s. So a $1,300 value, which is just super, super cool. But we'll be telling you guys a little more about those here in just a second. But let me go ahead and introduce our good friends from Klipsch. Vlad, we'll start with you since you've got one right there in your hand. So why don't you introduce yourself, tell everybody where you are joining us from and what it is that you do for Klipsch.
Yeah, I'm Vlad Grudzinski, Director of Product Development. I've been at Klipsch since 2014, which actually I think today is my anniversary for starting at Klipsch.
Very cool. How many years?
Since 2014. So do the math for me. 9. We're at 9.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, it's going to be a decade. It's going to be a decade. One more year, and I can start getting into the Mark Cassavant territory of double digits.
Double digits. Who's counting, right, Mark? Chris already said I got dressed to the nines for this live stream.
Yeah, I saw that. That's awesome.
Very, very cool. And you've got the 7s right there. Is that what you were showing everybody?
Yeah. It's funny because I think the last time this live stream happened, it was a set of 5s. And as the speakers get bigger, they're getting harder and harder to lift. So I'm sticking with the 7s for 9 as opposed to the 9s.
Well, I still have my 5s that I'm using right here beside me for my.
And I'm joining from Detroit, Michigan, the Detroit suburbs. So I saw David Chambers and a couple of others. We had some Michigan contingent.
Absolutely, I'll keep the Michigan connection going. I'm drinking the Bell's Oberon just outside of Kalamazoo. Vlad, what you drinking with us this evening?
All right, so it is the Corona Familiar. If you have not had it, I highly recommend that you try it. It is not Corona Extra or Corona Light. It is not a dark beer. It's still light if you pour it out into a glass, but it is more full-bodied and it is delightful.
Very, very cool. Well, cheers. Let us know where you guys are joining us from as well and what it is that you're drinking on this happy hour. So, Mark, welcome back. Great to see you again.
Good to see you, Jonathan. Nick, congrats, Vlad, on 9 years. That's very fitting considering we're talking about 9s and 7s.
Yeah.
What is, for those who don't know, maybe tell everybody a little bit about what you do at Klipsch.
Well, right now I wear a lot of hats, but right now focused on a few things: business development, brand development, and then product development. Work with Vlad and the guys, or so. Of premium audio, different guys on the teams for our fans.
Mark, we may have to remind kids to stop streaming YouTube upstairs.
But
yeah, I think too much of your family is on the live stream. We can barely get you.
Got Mark headroom.
Yeah,
that's right. We'll work on
that connection headroom.
Nick, we'll come back to you. Thanks for filling in the seat last month. So I'm sure it should be a familiar face for everyone. But why don't you remind everyone what you do for Audio Advice?
Well, I am a theater designer here on the online side. So I design theaters and do calibrations and set up systems. And I also, if you can't tell from behind me, I love 2-channel. So that's how I got into all of this. So, Klipsch has been a household name for me since, about 2 years ago when I was 14. No, but yeah, no, I'm so glad to have you guys here. And I'm I'm calling out of Asheville, so home of great beer. If you guys aren't familiar with Asheville, North Carolina, but I'm actually drinking a Portland beer today. So this is it's called Ripe. It's made with papayas and other nice things.
Well, and for those of you guys who don't know, I'm sure we'll get, hey, what's a great demo track to listen to on those brand new pair of 7s or 9 speakers? And you can see right above Nick's head, it's his go-to.
Oh yeah, we talk about this one all the time. So I've got
his go-to track.
Yeah, if you guys have ever seen Wayne's World, there's in the guitar shop, there's a No Stairway to Heaven sign because it's the most overplayed song in guitar. So I've got No Hotel California, the most overplayed song in hi-fi.
I thought it said I Heart Hotel California, but anyways.
Nope.
There's so many though. There's Diana Krall, effectively her whole collection. There's Keb Mo. There's a good amount of Eric Clapton, Dire Straits,
Nora Jones.
Hey,
Nora Jones.
No one gets tired of money for nothing.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yeah, it looks like we have you back. So if you don't mind, maybe just quickly repeat what it is that you do at Klipsch.
Sure.
For everyone.
So I'm in business development, brand development, kind of an ambassador for the company, and then product development. Work with Vlad and the teams for product on the Klipsch side. Work also with premium audio company brands. So all of our other brands, the synergies with the electronics is fun. So yeah, I've been around for 32 years.
I was going to say, Vlad celebrated his 9-year anniversary. You were there when they founded Klipsch, right?
Thanks a lot. Well, I had Vlad's hair when I started too.
Oh no! I see what's ahead for me.
Yeah,
right. Yeah.
The hats are great though. The hats are good, Vlad. You'll be all right.
Yeah. I am a hat fan. We do have them pretty regularly.
All right, Vlad, let us know if you wouldn't mind share a little bit about what it is that the big giveaway that we're giving away here today.
The big giveaway is the big kahuna, the 9s. Great powered speakers with HDMI, bi-amplified, really powerful. I mean, really, if you want to get into 2-channel listening, if you will, or you want to get into home theater with just a 2.0 setup, expandable with a sub, of course, the 9s are the creme de la creme.
Absolutely. So $1,500, right? Which is a heck of a nice giveaway. So someone's going to be super excited when they win those here at the end of the show. And remember, we're also giving away a pair of the 7s for best questions. So keep those questions coming. We're going to get to those. But before we do, maybe for those who aren't as familiar with Klipsch, who are joining us again, Mark, you mind sharing a little bit since you were there at the beginning, a little bit about the backstory about Klipsch as a brand?
Oh, funny guy, Jonathan. I love you like a brother. So, speaking of brothers, another brother in the company, Roy Delgado, who's really Paul Klipsch's, I think, protege. He worked with him when Paul was still with us. And Paul Jacobs and we were around, of course, when Paul was still with us. He passed away in 2002. For anybody who doesn't know, Paul Wilbur Klipsch, PWK, as we refer to him, founded the company in 1946, a true founding father of the hi-fi industry. The hi-fi industry really was birthed right after World War II. Although movie sound, was something in the 20s and 30s where, high quality sound reproduction was being worked on in conjunction with the government. But Paul Klipsch took this real independent thought of establishing to his own principles, establishing and discovering and sharing with his industry friends types of distortion that were relevant to high quality, high fidelity audio reproduction. One of the funny quotes was, "It's not about high fidelity, it's either fidelity or infidelity with audio reproduction." So, but his principles that he established with his hallmark product, which we're still making by hand in Hope, Arkansas, the Klipsch horn, world famous, fully horn loaded speaker system, is high efficiency, is inversely proportional to distortion. So the more efficient a system, the less inherent distortion. Really key principle of Klipsch design. And then flat, smooth, real world in-room frequency response, not just in the anechoic chamber, but actually in your listening room. Control directivity, focusing the sound into the listening environment. We use horn-loaded drivers in a lot of our products, if not most of them, to achieve that. And then, of course, broad dynamic range. This is a natural attribute of Klipsch design principles. We deliver dynamic range like no other brand, really. I mean, to not be so shy about that. And people who understand the power of a live musical experience know that dynamic range is what makes it alive, what makes it feel like real instruments rather than canned or processed or sounding like it's a reproduction system. We really want to convey the excitement and power and dynamic, just all the natural sound reproduction of a live performance. And that's where we our claim to fame, if you will. So, and also there are some benefits with that. Our products are easy to drive. So if you have any of the reference Premier products, the Heritage products, you'll know that you can use a very high quality, smaller amplifier, an amplifier that might not be hundreds of watts. You can use a nice tube amp that you guys sell, high quality tube amps. There are a lot of passionate people out there, and you can get extraordinary dynamic range with 5, 10, 15, 20 plus watts. So it's really for people who are aficionados. And if you listen to Klipsch for a year, you'll be converted. You'll be converted. Your ears will convert you, whether you like it or not. It'll be hard to listen to something else after you've lived with them for a while. So we do have a lot of fans through the decades. A lot of people have owned Klipsch and handed it off to their kids. And it's just been a lot of fun working for this company. If it wasn't, I wouldn't still be around,
Awesome. So, thanks a little bit of the background. And like you said, I've still got my Klipsch 5s that I've had for several years now, right? And they're not going anywhere. And we have obviously all the Heritage products in our showrooms in both Raleigh and Charlotte. So, they wouldn't be in our showrooms if we didn't think they were the best of the best, performance-wise for the price. So you guys have done an amazing job. Vlad, transitioning a little bit to what it is that we're talking about here today. You're the new powered speaker lineup. As I mentioned, a lot of folks probably familiar with the 5s at this point, but you guys just recently launched the 7s and the 9s. So maybe you can share from a product perspective what it is that went into the thought process about launching those 2 new products.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're familiar with the 5s, same formula, but scaled up larger to hit that sweet spot of this is all that I need to drive my home theater in a very simplified fashion, right? So we have a 6.5-inch bookshelf in the 7s. We have an 8-inch driver bookshelf in the form of the 9s. They both use reference Premier tweeters, so it's the highest end that you can get from our passive line of speakers. And they have some amped up bass drivers, full range, that do a great job reaching low and playing mid-range. And it's all amplified. It's controlled by DSP, but really simplicity is the name of the game. I always look at a nice living room, and when there's a pair of nice looking speakers there, it looks cosmetically good. So it's approved. They're using genuine wood materials. So whether it's the walnut finish that I have or the walnut finish that then is covered with black paint to make it a little darker and cooler, those are the 2 speakers. So you've got the 5s. Now they've grown up to the 7s and the 9s in form factor. And what does that give you? That gives you more loudness. That gives you more bass extension. There was a whole series of questions like, hey, do I need a subwoofer? Do I need a subwoofer with the 7s and 9s? And the answer is no, not even close. So the 7s play down to 39 hertz comfortably, which I will say, whether you're listening to music or movies, the lowest stuff that you will find in common music, without reaching for exceptions. And I know, Mark, you've got some tracks that you've given me that have pipe organs and really amazing things that go down to 20 hertz. But whether it's hip hop or rock or anything in between, most of the time that 40 hertz range really, really captures it. So I would consider it, in most cases, full range speaker. The 9s will go down even lower to 34 hertz. Now, for somebody that wants more, and as we found out, it's interesting, there's official reviews by publications, and then there's actual customer reviews and what they do with products. People love bass, and whether professional reviewers respect it or not, we give you the tools to go lower and play louder, and all of that can be done through the Klipsch Connect app. One cool feature we have is dynamic bass. Dynamic bass of course, takes an artistic approach on the frequency response and gives people what they want, which is typically more bass, especially at lower volumes. One thing that Klipsch rarely gets the credit for, and it is often a great reason why our products sell so well, is they play great at lower volumes. So when you crank up a speaker, for the most part, you give it a fair shake, and a lot of speakers start sounding similar, if you will. But at lower volumes, that's when you could tell that Klipsch sets itself apart with the dynamics and wide dynamic range and detail, and being able to produce that low, warm sound. And that's really what dynamic bass is for. You're playing music in the background, passive listening, and it always sounds great. So that's what the speakers are capable of. I think the 9s with dynamic bass turned on at like 35% volume would hit nearly 20 hertz. So they hit 22 hertz in their bass extension, which is truly full range. Now, of course, if you do want to add a subwoofer, I'm not going to say no. We do have a new line of subwoofers.
Yeah, why don't you just quickly tell everyone a little bit about the brand new lineup that you guys just launched?
Yeah, so we have a whole series of 10, 12, 14, and 16-inch subwoofers that'll play below 20 hertz. So there you go. That's the limits of human hearing. Now you're picking a subwoofer based on your room size and how many of them that you want for equal dispersion and distribution in your space. But I know Mark is jonesing to talk about some of the RP subwoofers.
No, I was chuckling because the limits of human hearing. These will test the limits of your domicile,
feeling, right?
Structure of your home.
Yeah, that too.
You know, they're going to test the structural integrity of your home theater. You know, but that's all good. So there are some amazing things about these powered digital monitors, I like to call them, because they're really just custom engineered. The amps are perfectly matched to the drivers. And if you look at the specs page tells you a little bit of what these things do. You know, Vlad hinted at that dynamic smart bass equalization that will take it down to subwoofer territory and give you unbelievable extension. You know, when people talk about, oh, people like bass, and when you hear Klipsch guys say that, it's important to note this. We are about bass extension, not bump, you know, not false bass. You hear that in different systems. Sometimes people don't integrate a subwoofer correctly. There's just too much at 80 hertz. And it's like, oh, that's okay for 10 minutes. But then, you know, for a whole movie like Maverick, you want bass extension. You want natural bass extension that takes the burden off of your main loudspeakers. It could be a reference Premier home theater system. It could be these powered digital monitors with a true subwoofer, a subwoofer that really does the bottom octave and does it effortlessly and does it with authority and without distortion, an effortless ability to do that. When I was a kid, Jonathan, I don't know what age you were when you got into hi-fi, but I was about 14, 15 years old.
You said that was just post-World War II, right?
Oh my goodness gracious!
That was a softball.
Some words will.
My dad was in World War II. Okay, so I played in the Army right. Uniform. You know, I played. You know, but the hi-fi days. You know, when hi-fi was considered an appliance in your house. You know, it's like it was as important as a dishwasher, right? Or whatever, toaster. And now it's maybe whole house audio and a home theater, but hi-fi gear. And everybody knows, kind of, if you're into audio, that the human hearing range is 20 kilohertz, 20 hertz, you know, especially if you're a youngster, you know. But that 20 hertz, that's an octave that goes down to where you're feeling it. And with these powered digital monitors and one of our new powered subs, you have an active self-powered system that will do 20 to 20 kilohertz effortlessly and give you sound pressure that will get you in trouble. I hope my Wi-Fi's cooperating here. If you guys,
it's barely holding together, but nonetheless, I think we got the gist for sure.
But if you look at the max output on the 9s, 115 decibels. So if you throw a in with that, you're going to get even more than that. So really effortless power full spectrum, very low distortion because the amplifiers are self-contained. It would be hard to assemble an audio system of separate components, although, you know, at your stores you could do it, Jonathan, with the right amps and speakers, separates. But this is a high-res capable hi-fi system for people who don't want that complexity. It's really something for everybody. It works for everybody. And you don't have to have this barrier of complexity to get this ideal sound reproduction in your home with simplicity and app control. It's very, very cool.
Yeah, and that makes for a killer. Some people ask, you know, hey, how does this work for like a home theater setup, or is there a replacement for a sound bar? So like, if for a 2.1 setup, this has got to be hard to beat, right? Especially for if you're into movies, they're very musical, right? Like A Star Is Born, or maybe Bohemian Rhapsody, or something like that, right? How would you compare this to maybe some of the different soundbar offerings that are out there that are comparable?
That's kind of the core of what I think the 5, 7s, and 9s do, that we're trying to communicate to people. Because I think everyone's kind of bypassed the fact that, okay, I'm going to get a sound bar, and now let's see how many checkboxes I can check based on the features that are available. Does it have this feature, this feature? How many channels does it have? How many drivers does it have? How many watts does it have? And it's a crazy competitive market of packing in as much as possible into a small horizontal tube. But it kind of misses the point on some of the fundamentals. And I asked, I think your team, that there's a really cool YouTube video that Vox did about why are we watching all movies with subtitles now?
Right.
And it's like the core of what a soundbar or most audio products are supposed to do. Like, let's hear the dialogue clearly. Let's start there. Let's do stereo listening, because no matter how many channels you have and how much virtualization you have and cool surround features, it's coming from a small space. So when you're sitting 6, 8, 10 feet away from it, like a soundbar, you're hearing most of that sound coming directly from in front of you. And unless you have the right room or layout, which I know that, you know, Jonathan, you've been to our building, you've seen our sound rooms. Yeah, we've got walls on left and right that are the exact distance apart. Our couch is floating in the center of the room. But realistically, like, we look at how many of our houses, do we have that set up? No, like mine's open to the dining room and to the kitchen, and the ceilings are too tall or potentially vaulted, and there's windows over here where there's drapery over here, and it messes up that whole checkbox list that you went through when choosing your soundbar. Start with a great pair of stereo speakers and point them towards you, and you will be amazed at how surround they really feel. Because I think most people have forgotten that let's go to stereo first. Right. And as soon as we do that and we orient the speakers in the correct direction, where there's a tweeter on top and there's a woofer on the bottom, you'll understand the fundamentals very quickly. All of a sudden, you can hear the dialogue, no matter how quiet or how loud it is. You'll hear the difference in the instrument spread and hear soundstage and imaging and all of those things. When you have character on left and character on right talking to each other, you'll actually hear it coming from the left side of your screen versus the right side of your screen. And you'll hear it accurately and different from all the ambient sounds that are happening across the way. So I think there's a lot to do with the way that movies and music are being produced today, with the expectation that the system that you have in your home is going to be pretty high end. I mean, for the most part, the way things are mixed today, for all the content that we watch and listen to, it's with the idea of pretty sweet speakers. And the reality is, people at home mostly are listening to them through their TV. At best, we've got it in a sound bar. And that sound bar, I hope, is working well in your home. But soundbars nowadays are trying to do with what audio video receivers do. And that's multiple channels, multiple inputs, lots of different things added to the equation. And when I even set up a whole series of soundbars in my house, I was kind of baffled by, well, an audio video receiver kind of walks you through the room calibration process and dialing in the channel levels between the multiple drivers and speakers. And most soundbars don't do that yet. So the way that it sounds in our listening room at the Klipsch office, we can probably get that set up to sound really, really good. And so can most other brands doing most of their other soundbars. But the reality is, in your home, you might not set it up right, or you might not have the ideal environment. And what you're going to be missing out on is vast. And you're not going to hear dialogue. You're not going to have a great audio experience. You're not going to love listening to music with all of the post-processing that's going on. And isn't that the point? We set up a set of speakers and they make whatever that you're watching or listening to just a far more engaging and emotional experience. So that's what we're trying to do with just a set of speakers.
Yeah, and to touch on that, Vlad, too, you know, you can't beat physics. You know, everybody looks at sound bars, and at the end of the day, no matter how many 4-inch drivers that you put on there, you know, or smaller in a lot of cases, it can't do what a larger driver, 6, 8, whatever inch driver can do, because when it comes down to frequencies.
Yeah.
And on top of that, you know, people are, you know, kind of get confused when you're talking about stereo speakers. Like, well, you know, I like the sound to make it, you know, I want it to sound like it's coming from my TV. But really, whenever you have a stereo pair, you get imaging. So if you're sitting in the pair, like behind or in front of a pair of speakers like this, you know, you're sitting dead center, then you're going to have, it's going to sound like it's coming out of the dead center of that television. It's not going to sound like it's coming from the left and the right at the same time. So yeah, I support, you know, a nice set of powered bookshelves over a sound bar. I'll admit I don't have a sound bar in my house.
Your background is a clear giveaway. It's
right.
like,
I've got speakers,
like real speakers. I'm like, oh, okay, I get it.
I know. I had to every time we go somewhere or rearrange things. I'm like, where am I going to put this set of speakers? I've got a set of 5s downstairs right now. Yeah. They're set up with a turntable as well.
Yeah, for the longest time.
What's the Paul Klipsch famous quote of like, "Hey, for this to sound any better, physics would have to change," or something like that?
Yeah.
Was that close enough?
Mark, you're muted, I think.
Did we lose you? We lost
his approach to sound design will change when the laws of physics change, right? Or he'll be proven wrong when the laws of physics change.
Right.
That's
not
like
anytime, not anytime soon, then, I guess, right?
Right, exactly.
Let's see. Vlad, you had a question, I think, from Christian you wanted to touch on. He said, Christian Sims asked, what's a good center channel for the 9s? Or the 7s, I guess.
Okay, so I think that's partially what this video that I wanted posted goes with. The 9s are a set of powered speakers. You get a left channel, you get a right channel. The best center channel for a set of 7s or 9s is the phantom center channel that the 7s and 9s create.
Right.
Okay, and there's a couple of reasons for that. They sound the way that they do. They're definitely EQ'd and DSP'd in order to be as clean and as flat sounding as possible right out of the box. And a phantom center channel, you got to think about, you could put as many speakers as you want into a room, but really you still have 2 ears. So the time of arrival of a pair of speakers, when something arrives in your ears at the same time, your brain thinks it's coming directly from the center. And what do a pair of good speakers at a good height do is they put that center image directly in the center of the screen. And between 2 speakers, based on the amplitude of the individual speakers or the panning, this is what I was talking about when you actually have 2 characters interacting on the screen. And sorry, guys, I've had the 7s and 9s for like north of 6 months as my daily drivers in my house. And I've not been able to talk to the public about them. So you're kind of just unleashing what I've had pent up over time about these speakers. But listening to movies, you can actually hear the dialogue shifting between the 2 characters that are talking on the screen. And that's something that I find really, really cool with just a great stereo pair of speakers.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, I've got the 5s right here, and it looks like your voice is coming right in front of me, right?
Yeah. Mark, you were muted again. I think you're still.
No, I'm just making sure there's no background noise.
Okay.
By the way, somebody asked, these are 9s behind me. Okay.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
And there's TV there.
Well, okay. I was wondering. I was like, it looks like a virtual background.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, I see it back there.
It is.
Yeah. Nate, maybe you can touch on this a little bit. Some folks asked, this was Scott's question. He says, what is the ideal placement of speakers in relation to either your TV or your 2-channel setup?
Whatever works for your room, and then you're not going to get in trouble.
Well, it's similar to your 2-channel. Yeah. I mean,
yeah. Well, you know, so I get a lot of questions on this. So everybody talks about porting, and like rear ported versus front ported. These are front ported speakers. I've pointed my speakers a lot today. Normally don't, but so front ported speakers, I typically could keep a little bit close to the wall, be justified, and not get people angry at me. But in reality, you know, it's the closer you get to the wall, the more you're going to have room gain. So room gain is, you know, basically bringing out more bass. You're hearing a little bit more of the room, all of that. And so some people call it a really bad thing. They're, you know, when people kind of get into speaker placement, looking at it, the first thing they say, they see a picture, they comment, your speakers are too close to the wall. But in reality, it can help certain speakers and it can just change the sound. Now, unless you want your speakers 1/3 of the way into the room and, you know, you want to use the rule of thirds, that's not really applicable for most people. So, you know, that's where I think that Klipsch actually, you know, they have some EQ adjustments that you can do. So if you move them closer to the wall, they are a rear ported speaker. You're going to get a little more bass. Turn down the bass if you don't like it. Yeah. It's pretty straightforward.
The app addresses that too, Nick. And
Vlad, maybe, or Mark, maybe you can touch on that, because I know that the app's come a long way since we probably did this last live stream with the fives.
The app is fantastic.
It's different. So what are some of the things that you can do through the app?
So let's say you get them at home and you open the app, you connect to them. All right. It uses Bluetooth Low Energy. So you can be streaming Bluetooth from your iPad while you're controlling it with your phone, because it's a Bluetooth Low Energy connection for the app. So it's cool because you can sit in your chair. If you have a sub connected, you can adjust the sub output level and the phase of the sub from your chair, which is pretty cool. You can adjust EQ. And then, of course, when you set them up initially, it gives you a few positions. It asks you, where did you position these in your room? Are they against a wall? Are they away from a wall? Are they near a corner? Right, Vlad? So it automatically configures its bass tonality, you know, for the room placement. So it's not going to be too thick, you know, if you're against a wall. So it'll just kind of help you along with basic setup and optimal sound based on your placement. So, and everything Nick said is spot on. I mean, it applies to our rear ported reference Premier speaker line, how much bass loading you want. The horns in our systems really give you consistent loading, if you will, of highs and mids. You're always going to get that consistent delivery. Bass is the variable, and it's very dependent on your room. Okay. Your seating position, your room modes, if you have peaks or nulls. 2 subs help with that. But when it comes to positioning these things, you position them for the soundstage, and then how close to the wall, and you can add EQ to get the bass loading where you want it in your position or around the room. For example, if you're in the kitchen and you're cranking them up to fill the kitchen, adjust the sound for the kitchen wherever you are, because they really throw. I DJ'd with the 9s for my 7th grader, 8th grader little social at their school.
Pushed Taylor Swift to the limits, didn't you?
Yeah, and don't forget Dua Lipa and all that stuff. But I cranked on the 9s. They didn't flinch. They remained crisp and sweet sounding, not harsh. You know, we've all heard people using PA equipment at the school parties, and it just sounds terrible at a certain volume. These sounded so great. I would go out to where the kids were and listen. I'm like, dang, those sound fantastic. And by the way, they were the McLaren 9s. I used McLaren 9s. They're the same sound. You know,
I think somebody earlier asked, is Lando going to get a podium this year? I don't know.
I hope so.
To be determined.
Hey, the season is long. The season is long. And last season didn't start off great either. And by the end, they were definitely competitive.
I love watching that Netflix series, though. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Anyway, go ahead. But the app is fantastic. It rocks. It's great.
Well, you mentioned, you know, obviously rooms, different types of being able to adapt it for the room that you're in. And then you also mentioned, you know, being outside. So is there a recommended room size for either the 7s or the 9s, or with the app, you can make the adjustments? That was from, I don't even know how to say that. I'll
tell you another story. I used the 9s in a presentation hall. Did I lose you guys again?
Yeah,
what happened?
Got a little choppy. You got a little choppy.
You got too excited.
I'll give you a couple of personal experiences. So actually, my 7s are in a 10 by 12 by 9 office.
Say that one more time. Sorry, I missed you there. 10 by 12 by 9.
Yeah, 10 by 12 by 9 office, and they fill the room awesome. And that's the small size. But my living room is 17 by 17, and it's also open to the dining room and the kitchen, which is like another 20 feet deeper. And they do a great job filling that too. What ends up happening with something that's horn loaded is you can face it where you want it to go, and that's where the sound will be ultimately. And we don't really subscribe to, is there a room size that's too small or too large? Because every size of room is going to interact with your speakers a little bit differently. Right. We try to guide you in the setup process as to whether you have the speakers up against the wall, whether you have them in the corner, or you have them freestanding on a set of speaker stands or something of that nature. And really the level of adjustment there, it's about 6 dB. So if you're freestanding in the middle of a room, 0. If you're close to a wall, let's go -3. And if you're really near a corner, let's go -6. And, you know, that seems like it's a great deal of output realistically, but the adjustments are pretty fine. And then from there, you do have the EQ that's available in our app. You could still, you know, if you're really techie and you want to set up Room EQ Wizard and use a UMIC 1 microphone and measure the speakers in the room, you can fine tune them that way too. But I think most of it is like salt, seasoned to taste.
I have an opinion on that. You know, if you're using Klipsch horn-loaded loudspeakers that have control directivity, you're already getting some room tuning. I mean, benefits, because you're not allowing reflections. You're already room correction. You can't really correct your room. You just try to not aggravate it, right? And when you're focusing the sound into your listening area, that's what the Klipsch do. They avoid the reflections, early reflections, and they put it into your primary listening position. That's why they have that precision sound staging and very precise detail, and at low volume. It helps with dialogue intelligibility with movies at low volume. You don't have to crank them for them to sound good. You can listen at low volume and hear all the detail and dynamics. So it's the room size thing also applies to subs. It applies to Reference Premiere. It applies to these. You can get smaller Klipsch that fit your room, but you can crank them up. You can crank them up significantly louder than similar sized products. I mean, that's just the nature of Klipsch. They have this dynamic capability. But don't be shy if you have a large room. I mean, the 9s, man, they just go and go. And then you can pair them with a 12-inch sub. In my office, I've got the 1400 connected to them, and it's just fantastic. I will just say,
that's a big setup for an office, Mark. That is a pretty big setup for an
Depends
office.
on who you're talking to.
Yeah, it's true.
Let's see. Larry Teal is on fire. He asked, while you're talking about the app, Vlad, he said, does the speaker placement app take into account the biggest room obstacles, nagging wives, and reckless toddlers?
Yeah, there's a button for that.
Did you take those into account when you were building the app? Probably, I'm sure you did.
Well, the funny thing about an app is like you end up going back to it and you continuously like revisit the sound in your room, because another component that we haven't mentioned is you might have a different preference at different volume. So when I'm listening to movies at night and I don't want to wake up my 3-year-old, I'll actually turn up the mid-range a little bit, and it becomes a totally different speaker in that way. At lower listening volumes, get more dialogue clarity out of it. It's not some synthesized feature. I mean, we're literally using EQ and turning up the mid-range a little bit in order to give you that clarity. So overall, it's a really versatile speaker when you get the fundamentals right.
Yeah, I like the dynamic bass because
do you have a thought, or are you just trying to see if you had any facial hair starting?
Oh gosh, Jonathan, is this the roast of everybody but you? All right, hold on. Let me think here for a second.
Serious. This is serious.
All right. Sorry, I'm looking at 2 monitors, and so it gives me an excuse. Anyway, the loudness feature, the dynamic EQ, loudness isn't something that's really talked about anymore. It was huge back in when Mark started, probably in the late 50s, Mark. Anyway, no, I'm just kidding. So if you look at some of the Pioneer and old Yamaha units and a lot of those, there's a loudness knob on there, and it always confused me when I first started out, in getting into audio. And so I was like, what does this loudness knob do? It does make it seem louder, but really it's not any louder. And it's just because at low levels, speakers have a tough time producing bass in their own if they're, just completely tuned flat. And then our ear has trouble, perceiving bass at low volumes.
It's about the ear.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so but I mean, if you're pushing less wattage through a large woofer, it's not going to be able to move as much air, and so our ear does produce, or it does perceive bass much less, and so our hearing really doesn't flatten out until like what 75 dB.
More than that.
Well, over 80 causes hearing damage. So
well, it's
Over a
sustainable.
long time.
Yeah, sustainable.
over a long time. Yeah.
Let me just say that when you go to a theater and you're watching John Wick 4 and it's hitting 110 decibels, I don't think anyone in there is too worried. But it's brief periods, But I will say that if everybody look at the Fletcher-Munson loudness curve, and that will explain what dynamic bass EQ is about, or the loudness button from eras past. Dynamic bass compensation that might happen even in Bluetooth speakers to make them sound rich at low volume, but then when you turn them up, they have to self-manage, so they don't self-destruct. They can only do so much. They're really tuned to play good at moderate volume, but when you turn them up, what do? So the thing about the 7s and 9s is these are designed to keep cranking and not compress. The dynamic compression that happens when you turn up a system to maintain that level, true extended response. Some systems out there will do this as you turn the volume up. They will just roll off the lows and maybe some of the highs, but maybe just primarily the lows to just self-contain distortion, whatever. So if you look at the Fletcher-Munson loudness curve, you'll see that it's not just the bass, but also high frequencies at low volume are not as perceptible by the human ear. So you got to turn up the highs too at low volume. And that's what the loudness button used to do decades past, guys, right? When I was, in my early days. Okay. But, you would see maybe on a spec, maybe plus 10 dB at 100 hertz and maybe plus 5 or 6 at 10 kilohertz. That was like the loudness button. Then it became just the bass. And then you had your, everybody would go up to bass and treble, crank them up, because at low volume, that sounds right. But at high volume, it starts to get nasty. Yeah. So a good loudspeaker system will play natural and keep going. The dynamic natural response of the system that won't compress. That is the beauty of high efficiency, though. If the speaker's not working hard, you have this dynamic ceiling that's way above, some of the standard stuff. Now, because this is a closed loop system, self-contained with amplifiers matching, the whole system is designed to outperform maybe what you might get in a similar size package because it's digital domain. What is also cool is there's no analog crossover here. The tweeter has its own amp. The woofer has its own amp. The frequencies are sent to the tweeter, only the tweeter, because of the digital crossover. There are no analog components filtering things. It's just you get these frequencies, you get these frequencies, and it's perfectly blended, digital domain, phase coherent, precision engineering, high-res decoders, as we mentioned. It'll handle a turntable, a PC input, USB, fiber optic input. It'll handle obviously Bluetooth 5.0. Stop me when I leave anything out, Vlad. HDMI ARC, audio return channel, which is super cool because your TV remote will control the volume of the speakers.
That's the main one, really. I expect most people to be using this if they're plugging them into their TV with HDMI ARC, and they're going to take our remote and they're going to put it away. They're going to use Klipsch Connect to do whatever adjustments they need to do, and then they're going to use their Apple TV remote, their Roku remote, their TV remote to just get their content. And that's the main point of the speaker, is it gets out of the way and lets you enjoy that content. And really, ours does that. And whatever input devices you might have hooked up to it will give you the access to the content that you want. That's the expectation.
It's a Swiss Army knife. I mean, whatever you have, a real turntable, with a moving magnet cartridge, and then it's got the preamp built in to the speaker. So
let me interrupt. Larry just asked, and I think some other people have before, which inputs support full 24-bit 192 kilohertz? All digital inputs. So the optical, the HDMI, those are your two inputs that you're going to drive with that high-res signal. Also, there's some pretty good logic that's programmed into the speakers to know when you're getting an interaction from something like that. So all of the switching inside happens automatically. The speakers will wake up from any input out of standby. They'll go to that input automatically. And then there's like the one overriding HDMI ARC input, which if you start interacting with that one, will switch you to HDMI ARC and it'll go to TV. For as many inputs as the speaker has, we've had to create a lot of really good user stories for how you would use them. So my goal was always to be able to take the remote from the Klipsch speakers, put it away, not have to get off of your couch and adjust the input on the product. It should predictively think what you're trying to do and go to the right input and do the right thing. So one of the products that we had tested alongside it is a Wi-Fi streamer that plugs into optical. And the goal was, hey, it's got to be able to automatically decode 24192. It's got to be able to switch to that input when I start playing music to it, wake up and go to the right input actually. And then after it goes to sleep, when I pick up my Apple TV remote and I turn it on, it's got to be able to figure out that I need to go to HDMI at this point and switch over all the things that need switching over. So for the most part, the 7s and the 9s do that very seamlessly. And if, God forbid, we get an introduction of some firmware update to a Samsung TV that's 5 years old that breaks that functionality, talk to us. We're here to help, and we're able to constantly update the speakers. So whether it's HDMI or the DSP or the MCU that's operating all of the brains inside of the speaker, we can manipulate it, we can fix it, we can get it updated so it works with your setup.
Can I make a quick comment about the streamer? So a lot of people have asked Jonathan, why didn't Klipsch put a streamer into these speakers? And we didn't want to have an expiration date on these things. We want these to be relevant in 10 plus years based on the high quality DAC in them, the high quality amps and drivers. And this little front end guy, there are a lot of them out there. Okay. But you know, you can easily get the front end figured out with, like, what is it that we've been talking about, Vlad? What is the little one that we think is pretty cool out there?
WIM, WIIM, WIM Mini and WIM Pro.
And it does exactly what Vlad was talking about. It lets you select the highest res, output into the fiber optic connector into these speakers, and it'll ensure your co-buzz at full res or whatever else you're streaming. Had to give Dave Solomon a little plug there. But, if you have high res, you pay for high res streaming music, you're going to get all the benefits through this high res system. And, I was talking to Jill Eskell earlier this week, and I just said, here's the thing. Let's just talk about the 9s, the 7s too. For $12.99, $14.99, you would be hard pressed to put together a system that kicks butt like these do with the high quality and high resolution. I mean, look, we make separates, okay? But we know there are people out there, it's another customer who wants simplicity, but wants it all. They want their high quality. And we decided, let that front end be in the television or the streamer. Heck, most people will be using this, their phone, and sending it Bluetooth, and it needs to sound fantastic with Bluetooth, which Bluetooth's come a long way. Would we all agree with that?
Oh yeah. Bluetooth actually.
Bluetooth is in the 7s and 9s. Someone asked that earlier.
Version 5.0 with SBC, which is the required codec, AAC with compatibility to your iPhones and Apple iThingies, aptX, which is the de facto HD for most Android devices, and aptX HD, which a great majority of devices now support. So actually the Bluetooth service is really, really good. You can go just about anywhere throughout the house, have high resolution aptX HD playback or AAC for that matter. And Bluetooth has gotten a slack for like a long time, back when Bluetooth was originally created with telephony in mind. So its capabilities were only matched to that of like wireless carriers and standard phone calls. Then like Bluetooth 2.1 comes along with a feature called EDR, Enhanced Data Rate. And it brings on a bunch of these features that make it useful for streaming music of some sort. Since then, I mean, we're at Bluetooth 5.3 now, with very soon getting LE audio and LC3 codec, which is much, much smaller in size and perceivably much, much higher resolution. So Bluetooth is no slouch by any means to music consumption. We've done our fair share of blind listening on pretty heavy duty speakers and compared wired versus wireless with just Bluetooth. And honestly, most people can't get more than 50% right on selecting which one is which.
Well, Jonathan, I have to make this comment. You remember the days of MP3 and Napster, 128 kbps, and people are playing this through their audio gear. And did anyone blame the low res, MP3 files? No, they blame their audio gear. And we have been in the business of creating fantastic powered audio gear that even the low res stuff sounds really great playing through. Now with these things, with a new RP sub, you have this 20 to 20 kilohertz, 115 plus decibel capable system, low distortion, high res decoding capability, and you can feed it Bluetooth wirelessly from your phone. And it's a dream system for somebody who wants quality and simplicity. It's a dream in 2023. It's just, this is where we are. I mean, when I was a teenager, this is what we were pining for. We couldn't even, it was hard to find equipment at any price that could do that, really, any price. But back then, in the 1940s, Nick,
I'd say anything.
It was just, we were just happy if we had electricity. All right. Anyway,
you lost Nick and Napster. He was like, what?
Napster, right? Yeah.
I think there's been some
songs at night and download them, and they would be downloaded by the next morning, 8 hours later or something.
Oh yeah, I definitely remember that. And now I'm playing PlayStation 5, and there's an update. I actually saw this the other day.
Yeah,
PlayStation 5 turns on. Update is 1.2 gigabytes, which used to be massive amount of space.
Yeah.
Like,
now it's like,
oh man, I better grab a beer. And then I watched the whole thing go done. Yeah. They're like, oh man. Things have gotten a lot faster over time than I remember them on 56K modems and playing games online, and people touting that they have a T1, and you're like, wow, I wish I had a T1 modem.
Nick's like, I don't know what you're talking about. Oh, dude, you lost me at dial-up.
Oh no, you guys are saying that. I grew up in the middle of nowhere. My family still has DSL in 5 megabytes. You can't don't even get me started.
Yeah, it's still a problem.
I will do a couple more rapid fire questions here from the group. Mark, you mentioned digital. What about optical? I'm sorry, not optical. What about analog for vinyl and so forth?
Oh yes, of course. So there are RCA jacks on the back, and you can toggle it between the phono preamp or a regular line input. Okay, if you have a CD player, remember CDs, everybody. And there's also a mini plug on the back there. So if you have a turntable plugged in with the ground wire, then if you also have another line level input, you can use the mini plug. Okay, just get your RCA adapter if you want to do that. Optical, USB, is it USB A? It would come off of your PC as
USB B
as a D.
The old square
right that comes off
port.
Right. So it's like it's basically what a Dragonfly does. Takes the output of your PC. So yeah, all those different inputs, so much flexibility, but with that app, I just love the app. And it still comes with an infrared remote, so people can do that, get basic settings, subwoofer activation, things like that, inputs, all that, selection, volume control. But once you use the app, I don't think you're going to use the remote again. It's just too convenient.
Right. Yeah. For the additional features and seeing things live, there's been some chat about using digital analog converters. And before we go any further, I do want to address, you do not want to take a signal from digital to analog, then feed it into an analog speaker, or a digital speaker rather, which the 7s and 9s already are. So what you're doing is taking digital signal, converting it to analog, putting it into our speaker, which will then have to convert it to digital again, and then analog when it goes out to the drivers. So do not include a digital analog converter. Literally send the digital signal from one place to the other. You don't lose ones and zeros through a digital cable. Let the speaker do the conversion one time. That way you're not playing this kind of like megaphone game.
And for those who are into vinyl, this obviously works great right out of the box. You don't need a separate phono stage. I think someone asked earlier, is it the same phono stage in the 5s, 7s, and 9s, or is it different?
Pretty much, yeah.
And
moving magnet cartridge. So if you have a moving coil, you will have to get an external preamp for the moving coil.
Right.
Moving magnet.
So if you're playing, a turntable, so that's still going to be converted over into digital back into analog. So,
well, actually, no, Nick, it'll get converted to digital, but it'll stay pretty much in the digital domain. The last stage is the digital amplifier of the drivers.
Okay.
Right. The last analog step is the transducers, the drivers, because the amps are digital too.
Well,
okay.
Right. Yeah.
So it will, once it's converted to digital, it stays in the digital domain, and it's converted at a higher bit rate than compact disc. So it's still full resolution of whatever your analog source may originate at.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And to clarify on my earlier point, the easiest way to tell is if whatever product you're connecting your DAC to has a digital signal processor of any sort. So whether it does decoding of some sort or has EQ on it that's not analog EQ, you're doing this digital to analog step again effectively. So stick with digital, because passing through digital signal, it goes for miles, it doesn't lose any signal quality, it's wonderful. Let it happen at the last step that you could take. Now that doesn't take away tube amplifiers, analog amplifiers with analog knobs that do analog things, but for the most part everything's gone digital at this point.
Yeah, anything that you're running with DSP or anything like that is going to be most receivers, unless you have DSP off or an analog mode, most things are going to be running through some form of DSP.
If it's got room correction, it's digital. If it's got
except
EQ processing,
integrated amps,
digital.
Unless it's dedicated for that. 2-channel low, the 2-channel integrateds, but otherwise, glad you're right.
Yeah.
We are getting close to the time here. Let's see, Rick asks, actually a good appropriate question here. You guys will have some folks at Exponent, is that correct?
We will.
Absolutely.
And we will have 5s, 7s, 9s. We'll have a reference Premier subwoofer, so you can get a first taste of that. We will also have a separate room with some super high-end esoteric gear, as well as Klipsch AK6 Klipsch horns.
Very cool. So if you're in the Chicago area or want to make the trip here in about a week or so, definitely check out Exponent. It's still currently the largest consumer audio show in the country, but I think Audio Vice Live, we get another couple of years under our belt.
All right, I like your thinking.
Give them the run for their money, but we'll have a pretty big team at Exponent as well. So come see us and say hello if you're at the show. Let's see, another real quick rapid fire question. So grill or no grill? What are your thoughts?
It's whatever you prefer.
Just aesthetically only, right? There's no real difference.
I mean, we designed the reference Premier line in a similar fashion where there are no fasteners visible. We designed it to look great with the grill off. Okay.
Yeah.
If you want to look at the drivers, that's fine.
Right. And I think I will push my personal preference. The grills are there to protect the speakers. If you like the way that they look, more power to you. But
because you've got a little one running around. You've got a little one running around, so that's
I do. So that's why there are definitely grills available in this house. And you know what? Luckily, these are aesthetically pleasing. They match the room really well, and it was like the look I was going for. So yeah, most of the time, at least the 7s and 9s, I run them with grills on. Every other speaker, as you can probably see, copper cones, grills off.
Yeah, very, very cool for sure.
Good question.
I still have the grills, but I have the grills off on my 5s and on my sub that I have. So that's pretty cool.
It's just something to that horn contour that is really pleasing in your house, and it catches the light really well with different environments and makes the speaker look cool.
Very, very cool. All right. Well, believe it or not, we're up against time. This has been a ton of fun. I'm sure we could go on for at least another hour. Sorry if we didn't get to more questions, but we'll try to go back and answer as many of those as we can.
Bonus hour?
Yeah, you can. I mean, why not? Go ahead. You got a second one ready to go. We will announce the big winner here for the 9s in just a second. But Nick, you got a winner for the 7s. Best question winner. Who's that going to go? We'll give you a virtual drum roll while you're waiting to pick one.
All right. You know what? I don't need the virtual drum roll. So Larry Thiel had some banger comments.
He was on fire today for sure.
So you know what, Larry, this is going to be everything kind of grouped in together. But there was one that he had that was really great. It said, "What's the biggest hurdle for streaming media to catch up to the quality of physical media?" Love that question. We answered it in a few different ways throughout the entire show, but yeah. Because sometimes casting a wide net full of great comments gets you a sweet set of speakers. So thanks, Larry.
Awesome. So he gets the 7s, which are going to be awesome. And the winner for actually join us next time for our next giveaway. We actually just posted that, so be sure to check that out next month. And again, if you're interested in coming to Audio Advice Live, we'd love to see you. The guys from Klipsch will be there, as will so many other folks. So our winner for the 9s, $1,500. Again, Vlad, Mark, thanks for joining us. This was always a ton of fun. Our winner is Tommy Power from Indiana. So Tommy, we will reach out to you. Congratulations. You will be one happy owner of the new 9s here very, very soon. So thanks again, everyone, for joining us. It's always fun to do these. You guys make these a lot of fun. It's great to see folks joining us from all over the country and even all over the world. So it's been a ton of fun. Thanks for all the engagement. Again, Vlad, Mark, you guys are awesome. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for being lighthearted as well with some of the jokes. We had a good time trying to make it fun.
It's always a pleasure, Jonathan.
Awesome.
Yes.
And Nick, thanks
so much
for being here as well. All right. Thanks, guys. We'll see you again next time.
Take care.